Well, hello, and welcome to that thing we call Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop, rock, and prog. Today, we have a special guest returning to the channel. Always excited to have him back. His name is Eric Porter. How are you, Eric?
Thank you, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great. We're always trying to figure out what we want to talk about it's always like, when you have a returning guest, it's always like, okay, we talked about that. What do you want? What else can we talk about? And so it came up that both of us were going to the most recent tour called Beat, which is, of course, which is Adrian Belew, Steve Vai, Danny Carey, and Tony Levin. And playing, and I read the headline, it said playing the 80s music of King Crimson. And I was like, what? Are
Yes.
you kidding me? Did you feel that way?
When I saw it, I was thrilled because I never saw this incarnation of King Crimson. And seeing Steve Vai, I thought that's kind of an inspired choice. I mean, that could really be pretty cool. I mean, I just saw, I know Vai and Satriani have a connection, and I just saw Joe Satriani with Sammy Hagar
That's right.
doing the
Yes,
Van
that's right.
Halen tour.
Yeah,
But, Steve Vai's a terrific player. I know it has, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Fripp, they have his blessing to go out and do this. Right.
they
So,
definitely,
um,
yes, they're
you
blessed.
know, I think, Tom, we'll talk about this more, but I think what's really exciting is not only getting to hear this music live by, two of the creators, and obviously they're not going to pick schmucks, right? They're picking top of
No,
the line guys. Not, like I said in the beginning, not having heard this material or this incarnation of the band as a whole, because I believe they're only doing stuff from those three albums, if I'm not mistaken,
I
those
hope
80s
so.
records.
I hope
So
so.
I think it's a thrill. I'm psyched about it.
I'm very very psyched. And when I saw that, because that's my the 80s version, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but the 80s version for King Crimson for me is my favorite incarnation.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people would be like, dude, what are you talking about? But I just love, I don't know, something about the four of them together that I just think had this special. And I bought a cassette back in the day that was like the best of King Crimson or something, and it had like the 70s and the 80s stuff on it.
Okay.
Um, and it was like this long cassette, and it was kind of the first time I was really listening to King Crimson was this compilation that I bought. And I remember being like really blown away by the 80s stuff.
Okay.
So I just loved it, you know.
I
Uh,
mean, as you're a guitar player, I'm a guitar player, and having two, I guess I would say very contrasting styles. Not that they can't do other things, but I mean, Fripp does his thing and Blue does his thing, and the way that, and we'll talk about the intertwining guitar lines and everything else. Um, it's so unique, and I know I want you to get into the history of this, but and I'm sure you'll talk about it. It's kind of even odd that they chose to go out as King Crimson, right? I know they had used, I believe, Discipline, the first album that came out, was actually the name of the band
mhm.
when they decided to do this. And then kind of, I don't know if it was record company pressure or it was their decision, but it's so, and you know what? King Crimson almost album to album is different, right? I
Yeah,
mean, you
yes,
compare Red to
yes,
Court of the Crimson King, that's two different things too. So,
yes,
um, but
yes.
yeah, very different, very original. Uh, and I think that's what probably Fripp and the band were always about. They were always reinventing themselves. So very
Yeah,
cool.
and I think that's a good segue into the background. So let's head into that right now. So we'll talk more about going to see Beat at the end. We'll circle back. But because we're both really excited to go see
Yeah.
that concert. And I don't think it's going to disappoint. Um, so anyway, King Crimson, as you had mentioned, I mean, the only thing that's the one guy that's just all the way through is Robert Fripp, right? I mean, he's the cornerstone of the band, obviously. I don't know that he was at the very beginning, but he became that. I think it was pretty even partnership between the Giles brothers and and Fripp at the beginning. And because didn't they do an album, Giles and Fripp or something
They
like
did?
that before?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't have that record. Actually, I would love to have that album. I gotta find it one
I
of these.
don't either. You're right.
It's kind of a rarity. I think it's probably like $80 for the album. So um it's one of those. So anyway, King Crimson was started in 1969. They burst out of the gate. I'm going to try to make this kind of quick. They burst out of the gate in 1969, of course, with Court of the Crimson King. Massive record. I mean, it really had a huge impact on the music scene. I think one of their early gigs was opening for the Rolling Stones in Hyde Park, I believe.
Yep.
So I mean, it's like they got this huge. I mean, just from going to the playing the marquee for a little bit, then all of a sudden, boom, they're opening for the Stones in this massive concert. So they got this huge, huge exposure right off the bat. So they really got off and running very quickly. And they were an amazing band. I mean, people that, by all accounts, people that saw them, people, members of Genesis, Steve Hackett and I think Tony Banks said it too, that they just were like blown away when you saw King Crimson. They were very unique at the time, doing these crazy, complicated arrangements, blowing people away with things like 21st Century Schizoid Man, which like that's like still to this day is kind of crazy. I mean, you listen to
Yeah.
that now and you're like, whoa, it's still crazy. So 69, it must have been really nuts. Um, so anyway, they did 7 albums in 6 years. Court of the Crimson King in 69, Wake of Poseidon in 1970, then Lizard in 1970, Islands 1971, Lark's Tongues and Aspic in 73 with when Bill Bruford joined, and then Starless and Bible Black in 74, and this is with John Wetton and Bill Bruford, and then Red in 74, which is just the power trio of Fripp, Bruford, and Wetton, which I just love that album to death. I wish they would have made another album.
Yeah, and I don't remember, was David Cross just a guest on that, or was he actually a member of the band? Because I think Cross was on Red, right?
Cross is on. Yes, I think he's there as a guest.
Okay,
I think he had formally left the band after Starless. I think.
gotcha. Okay.
I think. Because for some reason, who knows why, but he said he felt a little bit like not part of the band or something, so he ended up leaving. Um, but and I think that Fripp was getting tired. I mean, I think he kept threatening that he was going to break up the band, and then finally, after Red, he made good on his promise, and he kind of disappeared for a while, and so did King Crimson. From 1974 to 1981, they were nowhere to be found. But you did see Fripp guesting on other artists' albums like David Bowie, and fast listen to Fashion, on Scary Monsters. That and the crazy guitar stuff is going on. It's all Fripp. And then, of course, he was on Heroes as well. He did all the overlapping guitar stuff on Heroes. He was on he Peter Gabriel. He worked with Peter Gabriel on the second Peter Gabriel album. He oh, that's the first one. Never mind. And then he also worked crazily. We worked with Daryl Hall. He on an album called Sacred Songs, which was just insane. But it seems like a weird pairing, but apparently it was fun for both of them. So
Well, have you seen, did you see the episode of Daryl's House? Where you have to check that out on
I
YouTube.
don't think I've seen that.
I believe that Fripp did an episode and they kind of talked about the work they did together, which, you know, I don't have it. I've never heard it. But definitely, like you said, it's an an interesting a pairing I would never put together.
No,
Um,
no.
but you know,
Apparently, he said he wanted to work with a great singer, and so he said that Daryl was one of the best singers he had heard in a long
oh,
time, or
geez,
something.
Greg Lake and John Wetton, he had some pretty monster singers in my book, and
like
I'm all
Greg
tough
Lake's
on
not
singers.
like Greg Lake's not an amazing singer. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Good point. Good point. And Wetton both. I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
Wetton a great singer too. So wow, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Well, I think you're right. I remember him saying something about wanting to work. Maybe it was just a different style or something. I don't know. But I'm like, you had some pretty good singers in
Yeah.
Crimson there, Mr.
No,
Fripp. So
for sure. For no question. And he did Exposure. The only thing I remember on that was he did the song Exposure. He did on his solo album called Exposure. He did it on the
mhm.
Peter Gabriel second record, and he did it on the Daryl Hall album.
Okay.
So all those that song is on all those three records. So it's
Funny.
weird. It's kind of odd. But anyway, um, so we're getting off a little tangent here. But basically, what happened was King Crimson disappeared. all of a sudden they show up again in 1981. And as you had mentioned earlier, they originally this was just going to be a thing called Discipline. It wasn't going to be called King Crimson. It was going to be called Discipline. And Fripp had hooked up with Adrian Belew, Bill Bruford, and Tony Levin, and they were going to call themselves Discipline. And I don't, who knows? I don't really. I did a little research. I didn't couldn't find, but I'm sure it was like the record company saying, "Why don't you just call yourself King Crimson or something?" You're going to sell more records that way. Who knows? Who knows? But who knows when or why that happened? But it ended
Right.
up turning into King Crimson, and so they rehearsed and recorded, and they put out their first album in 1981 called Discipline. And then in 82, exactly 80, and then in 82, which is
You got the
82, they
vinyl.
came out with Beat, and then in 83, so right 3 years in a row, Three of a Perfect Pair. So there we go. So, and I love the artwork on these. So really simple. I
Yeah.
love the simplistic artwork. Um, and I love the everything is kind of like the solid colors. I love that. I think it's great. So that's it, right? So it's just that's the background. It's King Crimson changed so many different times. I mean, every album they were a different lineup. This was actually a pretty solid lineup for three straight records. So it was kind of cool in that way that it was the same band for three albums straight. Which was different for King Crimson. So I'm going to hand it over to Eric and just I mean, this is going to be a very like just loose discussion. We're just going to talk about these albums. What is your when was the first time that you heard Discipline? Do you remember?
Uh, I think like 86, 87. Because I had met a friend, and you'll laugh, but I think you're from the same era that I am. Guy I ended up being in a band with, I met him in college. And I was going to a community college my first 2 years. So we got talking. I think my uncle, I probably said this on another show, my uncle worked for Ovation Guitars. So I had an Ovation guitar shirt. He just came up to me after class one day and he said, "Do you play guitar?" So we got talking. I wasn't a prog guy at this point. I was probably hard rock. I know Maiden and
Yeah.
all that stuff was kind of big and
Anything heavy? Yeah.
anything heavy.
Yeah.
And so we got talking. We ended up kind of clicking and we started putting a band together. And he's the one who really introduced me to prog. So you'll remember mixed tapes.
Yes, of course. Of
So
course.
I had a mixtape that was like his prog sampler, and there was Genesis and whatever. But I remember for King Crimson, he put Model Man.
Nice.
So he
Nice.
had something old, which I can't remember. I probably still have the tape lying around somewhere. So there was something from the old King Crimson, and there was something Model Man from Three of a Perfect Pair. And I remember probably like what you just said, it was so different sounding. I loved the guitar work that was going on. Baloo for me was a little tough vocally, but for some reason now I don't mind listening to him. He's got a very unique, we'll call him a vocal stylist. How's that?
Yes. Yes. Good
Very,
call. Good call.
very unique voice. But he works in this band very well. Um,
Yeah, he does. He
and
does.
that, like you said, I think, and at that point, all three albums were out and they were done.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I think I don't know if it's my favorite era, like you had mentioned. I really like it, but I think it was the era I explored first. I went back and got Discipline and Beat and listened to those quite a bit, and remembered I actually sat and trying to figure out the unique thing is you're a guitar player too, trying to figure out stuff like frame by frame, which part goes with what, who's playing what part,
Yes.
and obviously the Frippertronic stuff is beyond me because I don't have that kind of equipment. But a lot of the picking stuff
That
is
that
is
whole dater
very
dater 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 dater
exactly
dater 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 dater. Yeah, it's like what?
very fun to play.
Yeah.
Um, and I played these a lot. And the same thing, that's when you discover these bands, you find the stuff you connect with, but you're a collector, I'm a collector. You go and you get everything.
Go collect.
Right, go collect. So,
Yep.
but I found this stuff to be very impactful because number one, listening to it like that from the perspective of this band has already come and gone, plus all the 70s stuff had come and gone. And you're like, God, this is so different from what
Yeah.
they did in the 70s, and I think probably everyone thought that at one point. Like it's odd that they call it King Crimson, but now you just kind of get it. It's part of the catalog. It's part of what they've done. Um, I mean, it definitely has, the Frippertronics kind of sit there and you listen to what he's doing on that stuff. Robert, obviously, the guy is a genius, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
many
he is.
incarnations of this band? How many different sounds did they go through? How many guitar players? And you mentioned Steve Hackett and Tony Banks. I know Steve Hackett is a huge Fripp guy. He
Oh,
loves Fripp.
massive. Yeah.
Um, but the influence this band had, and I, I think, find stuff, but influenced by the new wave movement, I believe, or Fripp was, right? Because he was living in New York, I think, and getting that. Because wasn't he into kind of like Blondie and all this new stuff that was coming out, and then the Police, and I think that maybe that Andy Summers guitar sound kind of had something going because it's got that. I think they both used the JC 120s. Not to get technical on people, but I know Tom, you have that amp, I believe, right? You
Yes, I
have the
do. I
Roland.
own one of those. Yes.
So
Yes.
and that's a very, very unique sounding amp.
Very
And
distinct.
that I think
Yeah.
is their sound for these records.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's that clean,
I
that
mean,
really clean, super clean guitar
right,
sound.
super clean, great chorus. But I mean, you listen to this, it's so realized. Whether you like it or not, you listen to these three albums and you walk away with he knew exactly what he wanted to do, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And even I forget, you forget sometimes that Fripp did two albums with Andy Summers. He did Bewitched and I Advanced Masked.
Advanced Master, that's right.
So two records with Andy Summers. And I remember thinking Andy Summers is doing an album with Robert Fripp. Like that's kind of bizarre.
Right.
Because it was when it was right at the height of the Police. It was like the police were on fire during Synchronicity or whatever. So
Was that when it was? So it was post.
I think it was just post the Police, like
Okay.
right
Wow.
after. Like we weren't even sure if the Police were broken up yet. I think they were still, touring or whatever.
Yep.
And it was like the Police could do whatever they wanted, just like anything that I'm sure Andy's like, I want to do an album with Robert. Okay, great, Andy, whatever you want.
Sure.
Um, but these three records, I think my introduction was one of my buddies, like one of my music buddies when I was growing up. He was like one of the guys that had a lot of records. Like his parents had a lot of records, and he had a lot of records, and he played guitar. And I used to hang out with him a lot at his house. And he had an older brother, and his older brother was always into this like kind of different kind of music. I remember this, and I'm not sure which one he had. I think he may have had Three of a Perfect Pair. And he was playing it in the house, and I remember thinking like my ear was like, what is that? Like I remember seeing the album and I was like, oh, this is interesting record, interesting looking album. And it's very interesting sounding, but I never pursued it. But I do remember he had that album. And then, like I said, much later, I bought a cassette, and that was the compilation that I kind of started listening to, where I first really heard all the 80s King Crimson stuff. I remember hearing Heartbeat and just thinking it was the cool song. I just loved it.
I
Um,
think that's another point too. And I'm guessing that's more blues influence that, and I don't want to say quirky. I don't think that that's the word I'm looking for, but I find that, a lot of these tracks are shorter than some of the older King Crimson stuff,
mhm.
but like the pop, the melodies, I don't want to call them pop songs, but there's some very catchy songs on these albums. Like I could see radio play for some of these. I
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I don't know myself, thinking back, ever remember hearing this stuff. So I don't know how it was promoted. If they did, I'm assuming they put singles out, whether they did anything or not.
Yeah.
Who
I mean,
knows?
who knows? I'm
But
fascinated. I'm fascinated with the 70s King Crimson stuff. I think it's fantastic. I love it. But like you said, on these albums, there seems to be more, and I think it's the blue influence of he wanted to try to make these things a little bit more accessible,
yeah,
you know? Is
but
that
they're
fair to
very
say?
well written, as unique sounding as they are. They're really well written songs. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you could see them. I could see them getting radio play.
Yeah. So what is your let's just go quickly album by album. We don't have to go through songs or anything,
Okay.
but like, what is your
Sure.
take on Discipline from 1981? What is your general take on this album?
This is the one I reach for.
Yeah.
That's my take. If I'm going to listen to 80s Crimson more times than not, it's going to be Discipline. I think you hear in the other two, and I don't want to say they got into a formula because there's a lot of different stuff going on here, but I think you can hear where it just seems like this is the most realized. I like the songs the best on this. Um, the first three, you get Elephant Talk, which is just absolutely astounding
Love
between
it.
whatever Blue's doing with his sounds and the whammy bar getting the elephant sounds and frame by frame is just this. I don't want to say rigid because again that makes, but it's so precise but done so well. And
Hmm.
then you get something like Mare Kudasai that's just absolutely beautiful. I just they cover such a spectrum of stuff that and then you get the Fela Hungenji. I don't want to forget that either, right? With the percussion and Blue kind of doing his, I guess, rapping, if you want to put it that way. It's not, but I mean, he's doing his talk and walking through the city and it's a dangerous place. And I don't know. That one to me, it's fully realized. That to me, I know you said you reach for 80s King Crimson. That's your favorite era. That's a 5-star album to me.
Same here.
Absolutely.
Same here. Yeah. Yeah, I just have to. Same here. I was going to say it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I just think it's so good. It never lets up. I just Dale Jinjit is like I love. What's in the tape? What is it? What?
Right.
I love that when he just goes, and then who should walk up but two policemen,
Starts
um,
laughing and
yeah, and he's like, look, I'm in this band. Like I'm in it. We're writing an album about danger and violence in the city. And he's like, I'm getting nowhere. But it's just interesting. You can tell that was like a real story. Like it was a New
yeah,
York story that actually happened. And I just love, and I not only just I love the music on it too. So it's the music plus the
right,
voiceover is just genius. But like you said, Madai Kudasai, oh my God, just absolutely
right.
wonderful, beautiful.
Gorgeous. The slide that kind of gets the bird sounds with the slide or whatever. Yeah, it's just just a
The whole
beautiful
melody
piece
of
of music.
"She Waits in the Air." I mean, just it's just such a beautiful track,
It
and
really
it's
is.
it's so awesome, frame by frame, amazing. The first side, I mean, really, it's just like there's nothing.
It's
I mean, the whole album, there's nothing. I can't say it's anything.
absolutely.
It's all amazing. Love this to absolutely love this to death. 10 out of 10 for sure for me. So that
Agreed.
brings us to it's pretty tough to follow up that record, I would say, right?
Definitely.
So we go to Beat. That doesn't mean there's not good stuff on this album,
Right.
right? What would you say, Eric? What's your take?
Well, I would say of the three, it probably has my favorite song, which is Neil Jack and Me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the connection is with that. I don't know if it's the guitar stuff that's going on. But if someone said to me, what's your favorite 80s King Crimson song? It's Neil Jack and Me. Absolutely love it. Um, and again, I think when I started thinking about this record, I think some of I don't want to say some things maybe they were trying to be a little more experimental in spots and not, I think the Frippertronics kind of make more of a appearance on this one. Um, and I hate to sound old, but I think is it like Requiem just is kind of a noisy track to me. Maybe the second half of this, I think like after you get past like Two Hands, um, well, I'm rambling here, but like Neurotica reminds me of Beats' version of Thela Hungenji, a little different because he does that kind of talking through it. And I
Exactly.
think, a lot of some of this, I think maybe the intent was, hey, let's get a little more experimental. Because I think
Right.
there's a lot of, like I think, like I said, Requiem. Um, I don't know. Some of it comes across maybe as a little more noisy to me than song based. And I know probably Fripp was doing some stuff and they were probably trying to work the guitar thing out a little more. But to me, it's just not as structured, and maybe that's what I like more is that I think Discipline had the songs and the songs are terrific. Beat has some great stuff on it, but I think somewhere along the line it kind of loses a little focus. That discipline seemed to have that focus going right down the middle of the whole record.
Man, wow. That's like, I mean, that's basically, I made some very brief notes and everything you said is on the notes. So basically, what I said was side one, I'm all in. Like, I don't really have a problem with side one at all. I think, like you said, starts out really, really strong with Neil, Jack, and Me and Heartbeat. I just love those two songs. And then, Waiting Man, I like quite a bit too. I mean,
Yes.
I think that's just side one is just, oh man. Side two, I agree. You had basically said that it kind of starts fading a little bit for you, and it does for me as well. I had the same exact note that Neurotica was sort of like Theta Hut Gingy, just done different, and it sounds a little forced this time. It sounds like that one felt natural. This one feels a little more forced,
Yes.
you know.
Perfect.
And then I said Two Hands, beautiful ballad. Actually, Two Hands I like a lot. But The Howler, I said good, but not that memorable. And
Yeah.
then and then I said Requiem, same kind of comments. I said not a huge fan. I said of the it's mostly improv, it seemed improv, and it says it overstays its welcome a bit, in my opinion. It
Yeah.
goes on too long. Uh,
I, yeah, we're right in line then, I think, with that.
so we're exactly in line with this record. That's so funny. It was almost
And
exact.
Heartbeat's another one. Like, how did that not get to the radio?
I don't know. I
Maybe it
think they
did
made a
and it just
video
didn't.
for it.
Oh, you know what? I'll have to go check that out, Tom. I don't know that I've ever seen it.
I think they may have made a video for it because I think I have a memory of seeing it on MTV, but it wasn't like on heavy
Right.
rotation or anything
Exactly.
for sure. So but yeah, no, I think that I'm not positive. Don't quote me on. I think that might be the case.
Okay.
But yeah, Beat again, strong material on here. But as like you said it perfectly, it doesn't have the just all the way strikes all the way down the middle like Discipline does.
Yep.
Yeah. So that moves us on to the next album, 1983, the third in the trilogy, Three of a Perfect Pair. So
And you
uh,
know what? I think what you said about Beat might hold the same truth for this one. I love the title track. Model Man is catchy, strange, but it really works. Sleepless has that monster bass riff that opens it. I love that.
oh yeah.
Um, you know, but then things start to kind of get more experimental. I don't want to noisy. Probably, I excuse my English for that one. Let's go experimental or maybe more improv-y. And again,
Yeah.
I feel like maybe the second side just kind of dips because of that. It's not as solid, but that might not have been what they were going for either. I mean, they might have really been trying to open things up and get experimental. What I do like that I find is this one always catches me. Like Dig Me,
Dig me.
I don't always get into it. And then when the vocal kicks in is when I get into it. Like I think it's a great vocal. Like when he starts that, I'm ready to leave. I don't want to sing to
Yes.
anybody,
Totally.
but I love that part. But kind of the other stuff that's sitting around that for me doesn't work as well. So I feel like Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair are kind of a match in that really strong side one, side two. And I do think that's what they were going for. So kudos to them. But just for me, I guess it just doesn't work as much. Maybe in a live format, I'd definitely be more into sitting back and letting those guys kind of go to town. But I kind of feel like it loses focus on the second half of both of those records.
Yeah. Yep. And man, it's the same. It's funny. It cracks me up because we have a lot of similar opinions. I must be. I'm gonna put it this way. I must be soft because whenever they get really experimental, I start to kind of my focus starts to drift. I can't. I mean, I need a little bit more melody. And when they
Yes.
have when they have like you said, when they have the melody intertwined with the experimentation, which they do perfectly on Discipline, um, that I'm like, oh, I am 100%, 110%. I'm in. I love it. And when Adrian and Fripp kind of work together, it seems like they can create like these gems. And like you said, Three of a Perfect Pair, Model Man, Sleepless, the first three just out of the gates, like boom, 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 just
Bang.
killing it. And then it's like you same thing. I have the same exact review again where it starts to drift again on the supposed mostly on the second side. And it's funny that you mentioned Dig Me because literally I was almost writing off the entire second side
Okay.
from my just from memory. This is just from memory. I did some homework for this episode today and I had it cranked up while I was working. Dig Me, I was like, oh yeah, that one part where he starts singing is really cool.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really
I,
cool.
I like that that caught you too, because kind of like you said, if especially when you're doing what you were doing, Tom, where not to say it's background music, but obviously you're working, there's something you're not just sitting and listening. And same thing happened to me. I as I was playing these through a couple times, that always popped. If I wasn't paying attention or was kind of drifting,
Mhm.
when that part hit and dig me, it always like kind of reels you back in.
The
Like,
I'm ready
okay,
to leave. I want to get out of here. I'm
yep,
ready to ride away. Yeah, that part is just so such a
it's
cool
great.
chorus, you know. And but yeah, so God, it's all so funny. I mean, I was it's funny because I was attracted to you because I tell this story all the time that when I would watch you on other channels, especially Sea of Tranquility, of course, and I would be like, I agree with Eric. Like whatever they do, like it was like always like your assessment was always what I was like, I agree with that. Like Eric was
Nice.
so funny. So it continues, it continues. But and it kind of feels like maybe like you said, they're not out of inspiration, but it feels like maybe they're starting to like struggle to get inspiration a little bit by the third record. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And like you said, they were released. I mean, I think Discipline and Beat were what, 8 months apart. So I mean, they weren't
Yeah.
wasting any time. I think there was a little more time for Three of a Perfect Pair, but you're talking about a very short period of time for writing, recording. They had to have toured, so there's a lot going on in that small window. So you don't have the writing time probably that Discipline might have been written when they came together. You put it together, and of course everyone's coming in, so I'm sure Blue and they were flooding each other with ideas. Now you've got a second and a third record, which people always talk about the sophomore jinx, right?
Right, right,
So
exactly.
not, and believe me, none of these are all really good records, but you can see where, okay, like we were talking about with Thela and Genji and Neurotica, where like, okay, well, you kind of did that already. Not that that's a bad thing, but
Mhm.
the original, for whatever reason, works because, like you said, you think you heard Three of a Perfect Pair first, right? In terms
Yes.
of
Yeah.
album.
Yep.
So I remember hearing a couple songs, and then I may have bought Discipline first, but that one kind of escapes me too as to which one I had. But I've always gravitated to Discipline from having a choice of these three.
Yeah, and same here. It's the same exact thing. I discipline is like it's the top. It's and it feels like maybe they this fresh inspiration, they were together. It was the first one. You feel the energy coming off of that record. Like they're
Yes.
just bouncing off each other. And
Yep.
I just, and I think but for the again, still a lot of great stuff on the other two, but it felt a little bit more watered down, maybe not watered down. That's not seems harsh. Not as exciting maybe
Yeah.
as some of the stuff
Agreed.
on Discipline, or a repeat, like we said, or sort of a repeat. Um, but that's not to say that I don't listen to these albums. But you're right. Discipline is always number one.
Always.
It's always number one. And you know what I was thinking before I forget to say this. This is again sort of a random thought, but it's interesting that both Baloo and Steve Vai were both in Frank Zappa's band.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So interesting that they both had tenures with Zappa, you know?
Now I'm trying to think. I'm assuming that's how Fripp came to know Baloo or heard about Baloo to bring him into this. But I guess I don't know the backstory as to, obviously we know Bruford, and I'm not sure about Levin either, how he must have been aware of Levin through Gabriel, right?
Yeah.
So his
Yeah.
work with Gabriel. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm assuming maybe whether somebody said something to him like, oh, this is what you want to do, check this guy out, or if he already knew because he'd seen him with Zappa,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
I was thinking Levin didn't do all this flashy stuff with Gabriel. This had started here. Wouldn't you
True.
say?
The only thing I'm trying
I
to think
mean,
about this if he used the stick with Gabriel back in those
maybe
days.
he did. I mean, or maybe he did. Maybe he did on three.
Okay, because
I don't
I'm trying
know.
to hear stuff and say, was that the stick or not? But it's not coming to
I
me.
don't
So,
know. I'm not sure though. I'm not. I mean, if you know, let us know in the comments. If somebody knows, I mean, maybe I'm
well,
off, but I don't remember all this the Chapman stick and all the crazy stuff that he does on these albums before these albums.
what I did read, because now it's coming to me, because I did try to get a little backstory on this. that they did hold auditions for bass players.
Oh, they did. Okay.
And Bruford wanted Jeff Berlin.
Oh,
And I guess Fripp said he's too busy. And he said, I wouldn't have even had auditions had I known Tony Levin was available. But he said, between his work with Gabriel and he did so many sessions, he goes, I figured he wasn't even available. So Levin actually auditioned for this band, I believe. Go
yeah.
check it out. If I mean, if I'm wrong, then we'll put a little disclaimer in there. But yeah, I think
Jeff Berlin.
exactly because he
Yeah.
played with him on those records or had him on his records.
Yeah. Yeah. So that makes sense, right? He was familiar with Jeff, so he's like, yeah, let's do Jeff Berlin. So, but yeah, interesting. I mean, it's whatever. Thank God these four came together because they made some great music.
Absolutely.
And man, I'm again, I'm so excited to see this concert. I think that I think Danny Carey's a great drummer. I mean, it's hard to fill these shoes, right? It's difficult to fill Bruford and Fripp.
Are you a Tool fan or familiar with their music?
Yes. I mean, I know I'm not a massive fan. I mean, I bought, I think it was Undertow. Is that the album I bought when it came out?
I mean,
Um,
I've heard great things about them. I know of Tool. I'm not. I can't say I don't own anything by them, but I mean, just when I heard his name and I said, well, this guy's got to be amazing because they're not going to pick somebody who's not. And I'm
yeah.
very interested to hear what Vi does with the Fripp stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I same here. And it's, it's funny because I got to like Vi more and more and more because when you watch videos of him, is on like interviews of him on YouTube, he's just such a cool dude. Like, I mean, he's just such
Absolutely.
a nice guy.
Yep.
He doesn't put on any airs of any kind. The guy's an amazing guitar player, and he acts like he's just like, yeah, I got lucky with Zappa, and I don't. His Zappa stories are hilarious when he tells the
Yes.
stories about Zappa. It's so funny.
Well, it's
Um,
funny because I'm going to see Dweezil Friday night. I'm seeing his
oh, you
Zappa
are.
show.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
I
He just came
know,
through here, and I missed him.
I
Yeah,
believe that Frank had Dweezil learn from Vi, and I think he also had a Van Halen connection somewhere. But
yeah,
I think some
yeah.
of his early, let's say, instruction came from Steve Vai. And I don't know if you've ever seen him live. He's on Dweezil is unbelievable.
Dweezil's
Uh,
incredible.
yeah,
He's
great player.
incredible. Yeah, he's very good. I mean, the fact that he can recreate all that Zappa stuff like almost note perfect is just
Yeah,
insane.
it is insane.
I mean, he's a super talented guy.
But
I'm
I like what you said about Vi because I've felt that as well, that he just seems like a down to earth, uh, really easy to get along with. I love that they picked him for this. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of guys that you could think about that you might say, oh, maybe this guy will fit or that guy, but I think he's going to do a great job. I can't wait to hear what he does. And I hope something live comes from this.
oh
I'd
yeah,
at least like a live show, to
like a release.
commemorate, get a CD to
Yeah,
commemorate something.
yeah. Even like DVD or a
Yep.
Blu-ray or a I'm sure I would think they would, but
Yeah,
you
I
never
think yeah.
know. We'll see. We'll see, but man, I'm so psyched. I'm so excited to see that show. It's not even funny. I think they're. I mean, you don't go out and do King Crimson unless you're like
Right.
confident. I mean,
Yeah, you're
you
right.
know what I mean. It's like I think they're gonna kill it because they're gonna practice. I mean, I did see a very again a very short interview with Vi, like a recent one where he was talking about this project and he was like, man, trying to learn that Fripp stuff, man, it's like woof. I mean,
Great.
he was saying it's not easy. He said some of it's like almost counterintuitive,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
you
So
know?
it's almost like you're reteaching yourself how to play, right? Or play those
Yes.
parts. Because,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, when you watch him play, I do know that there's a clip of Elephant Talk, I think it is, on the show T Fridays, I think it was.
Yes, Fridays.
And
Yep.
it's on YouTube and they're playing Elephant Talk live and it's just
Killer.
it's unreal. It's one of those where we joke around about I don't know if I'm inspired or discouraged. It's one of those
Yeah,
because it's like the musicianship is just so through the roof. You're like, I'm never
yeah,
gonna do that.
exactly. Like we know that feeling, right? Right? No, no, no
Yeah,
play.
I'm never gonna be able to play
Absolutely.
Elephant Talk ever. Um, so and the fact that they weave those guitars, those like I said, that did it and did it and did it, and it's like, how are they doing this? How is this possible?
It's amazing. It really is.
It's
Um,
crazy.
because and you want to think about too, like there's got to be some looseness to this show as well. Like I just have a feeling like we're really going to get if you're going to be in guitar heaven because I mean I know they're going to do these songs and but I gotta feel like they're really going to kind of veer off on a couple spots and just have a ball. I mean, you know, you
Yeah.
got to open things up a little bit too,
Oh,
right?
I'm sure of it, and they're gonna have some fun for sure. I agree with you. They're gonna have some fun, and Adrian likes to have fun.
Yes,
And by the way, we're talking a lot about vibe, but Adrian is obviously no slouch. That guy can play
absolutely.
guitar. So you're right. It's gonna be guitar heaven. You're not kidding.
Can't wait.
Can't wait. It's
And
gonna
we
be
were
fun.
talking about that. So you're seeing them, or I'm seeing them October 21st in Albany. You're seeing them, I think you said the 27th.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So I'm seeing them on Sunday, the 27th at Masonic Temple in Detroit.
Okay.
So, which again is not a huge venue, but it's decent size. I mean, I don't know how many
Okay.
it seats, but it's a couple fat, maybe 1,500 or I don't know, something.
Okay. Yeah. Ours is small too. I think it's like 1,000 or just over 1,000, but it sold out. So it sold out pretty quickly too.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah, I saw a
I
lot of
mean,
I was looking it up today because I was refreshing my memory and I was looking at the dates and it was a lot of them are sold out. Which is really that kind of warms my heart. That's
yeah, it justifies the tour. And it's like, there's people who still want to hear this stuff.
the
So it's
people that
out
are
there.
not that many people out there that want to go see the King Crimson stuff. I just think that's awesome. I'm
Oh,
excited.
absolutely.
That's a good thing.
So, Tom, we should circle back, I guess, late October, early November, and maybe we can kind of go through the shows that we saw and talk about the live stuff.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. We're for sure. There's no
Cool.
question we'll be doing that. Because my wife gets mad at me because sometimes when I go to certain shows, I will engage a lot of strangers because I want to feel the love, like when I went saw Peter Gabriel the last time he came through and we went to Columbus actually. We went to Ohio to see him. And I was I kept talking to people around just saying, "You stop talking to people." I can't help it. I'm like, do you like Peter What was have you seen Gabriel before? When was the last tour you saw? Couldn't help it.
That's, hey, you got to pregame a little bit, right? You get to know the people around you, and you know, we do the same thing. I mean, whether I'm going with a buddy, my wife will go to shows with me. Usually end up talking to either the group around you, or if you're out waiting to be let in, people are talking about, you know, so it's they're just, you know, they're music fans. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get what you get out of them, right? So it's kind of
Yes.
cool.
You never know. You might meet somebody, like who knows, you might really connect and
Absolutely.
because I always think music is a real big connector. So but all right, last question. This is completely off topic
All
because
right.
you're talking, I know you went and saw Sammy Hagar because you're talking about Satriani.
Yes.
So we're talking about Vi doing this is sort of connected because we're talking about Vi doing Fripp. Now, I'm curious because I missed the show. Again, I've been missing a lot of stuff this month. I don't know what my problem is. I went on vacation. I've been like out to lunch ever since. But I missed the Sammy Hagar show that came through. It looked like it was pretty awesome. You went to it. How did Satriani do with Eddie Van Halen?
I thought he did great. I mean, he sounded great. I thought he dialed in the sounds really well. Now, I'm not as big of a Sammy era fan as I mean, I came out with Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2, Fair Warning, Women and Children. Those are my
Yeah.
albums. But
Yeah.
it's not that I didn't like the Sammy era. I was just more, I thought Van Halen was a little heavier, a little, you know, a little more punch to them than the Sammy era. But I'll tell you, I thought he did a fantastic job. I thought they had a great selection of songs. I can tell you, the crowd went absolutely crazy for Pound Cake. You know,
Yeah.
when they did the
Yeah.
the drill or whatever,
Drill.
and yeah, and you
Yeah.
know, it's funny because you obviously you can't listen back. You're taking it in at that moment. But what a blast. I mean, the crowd was totally into it. Sammy's great front man. You know, he's rapping with the audience and going back and forth. And, you know, Satriani he's funny because we were in a spot where we sat, it's a outdoor indoor amphitheater and it's only open in the summer. So we were up on the lawn and so we were pretty far away, but you could just, I mean, Sammy's 77 years old. He's
Yeah.
running across the stage. He was having a blast. Michael Anthony sounds great behind him. They did have a keyboard player on stage too, and I forget his name, but he was terrific, and I think he sang some backing vocals as well. Jason Bonham was awesome. I know
Yeah, he's a
I
great
don't know a
drummer.
lot about
Yeah.
drums, but I know a lot of people love Alex Van Halen. I thought Jason Bonham did a great job, but
Hmm.
Satriani was in a weird spot because people want to hear that Eddie sound and those solos like Eddie did them, and I thought he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I
Really,
mean, there's a lot of pressure for that gig. You got to be like
absolutely.
note perfect and like,
Yep.
because the haters are going to hate if you're not like perfect.
Yes.
You
And they're going to
know,
hate anyway. So, but
that's
you
true.
know,
That's true. That's true.
I was really impressed, and I thought, I thought a lot of times you'll go see a show and you're like, yeah, okay. I think they gave the fans what they wanted. They really did. Such
Yeah.
a good show.
Delivered, delivered.
Yep,
Yeah,
delivered.
yeah, yeah. Very cool. Good. I'm glad, and that makes me want to kick myself in more. Should have gone to that show, but I mean, and I saw a clip of Michael Anthony singing he was singing lead on some of the old Van Halen stuff.
He did like I
You
think
know, like
God,
he
I
ain't
want to
talking
say
about
he talking
love or
about
something.
love. Yep.
Yeah,
So yeah, he did fine.
yeah. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's nice that at least somebody's carrying the Van Halen torch. I mean, because otherwise, it's not nothing's happening, right?
Nothing. Yeah, it doesn't
So
sound like anything will either. So
and I totally get it that that the son Mammoth
Wolfgang,
uh Wolfgang,
Wolfgang,
yeah, he wants to do his own thing. I respect that. That's totally cool. Do your own thing, man. Totally. And I think his dad told him that, like, you need to do your own stuff.
right. Well, I
So
got a good story, Tom. Speaking of talking to, the people that are around you at a show, we got talking to a group of people next to us. You'll find this funny. Wolfgang Van Halen came through, I believe, the night before, played a small club in Albany, and there were all these people talking like, "Hey, there's a rumor that Wolfgang's going to come and play with them tonight," which he didn't.
right.
But I mean, people were like, that was a big topic of conversation around us that he was going to supposedly show up and get up and do a song with them. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
There's
know,
that would be like a buzz thing, like, hey,
yes,
like somebody starts, it just says it once, and everyone's like, oh, Willie, oh my God, he might play. Yeah.
that's probably what happened, right? It just like spreads like fire, right?
It's
Like
funny. Yeah,
wild.
it's so funny. So funny. But anyway, I would say, before we get on to another massive tangent, I would say that we have done a good job. We've done the best we can covering this era of King Crimson. It wasn't really, we didn't go song by song, but we went album by album, and I think we did an admirable job.
Absolutely.
Um, and I do think that well, wrong way. I do think that these albums are very very worth checking out. If you don't know these albums, go check them out for sure. No question.
Definitely.
You know, no question. And if even if you don't have tickets to Beat, just go buy some right now. You might become a fan just going to the show.
Yeah, that'll happen. You know,
Yeah. So more to come on this. Like Eric said, we're gonna do a follow up episode on this after the show for sure. Um, so, but anyway, Eric, it's always a pleasure to have you on the channel.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Love doing it.
It's always so much fun. We always have a blast.
Yes.
Yeah. So I hope you had fun. If you're still with us, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you for hitting that like button and subscribe if you really like what you see. It helps the channel. So appreciate that. And you know, I don't know, Eric, you have anything more to say?
No, I think go, like you said, go listen to the records. And if tickets are available, go see these guys. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's about it. We'll see you next time on Curless Mania. Take care.